All right, here we go. All right, so anybody know where we're up to?
I'm about 5, 7, and 3/4.
Which direction are you heading?
North.
North?
Oh, that's not north.
That's not north.
That's up.
That's up. Okay. All right, so we are up to chapter 11, Parak Yud Aleph.
Oh, so you knew that we were in chapter 11, but you're just testing us?
Doc, how long have you been in this class? Yeah. I have literally been doing this for 3 years. Every single week. And now you picked up on
And
it.
the whole thing is a test?
Yeah.
What's our grade?
I'm not going to share that publicly. Okay, here we go.
I've been tardy for a while. I've been tardy for a while.
You're excused. All right, here we go. So we are up to chapter 11. So in chapter 10, he described, or I should say developed, a major theme, and that is that based on everything he had said prior, the idea of man's relationship with all of the world is a unique one, in that man's neshama transcends all of the world and is present in all of the world. And it is only through the actions, thoughts and words of man that anything happens in all of the world. And because of man's being planted in this world, the physical world, and being sourced up in the spiritual, in Hashem himself, so above all of the world, so all along the way, man's influence is felt. So it's only through this influence that things work. And what we mentioned last week at the end was that the malachim, in particular, are also empowered only through the actions of man. So if a person does something, it has its effects throughout, up the whole line, so to speak, and the malachim are then able to do what they are going to do because of what man has done. But without man, the malachim are essentially stagnant. They stay put, they can't move, they can't grow, they can't shrink, they're just where they are, and they're what they are, and they have no power to change, which is very different, in fact, the opposite of mankind. Mankind is in this world because he does have the power of change, he does have the power of growth, and of failing, and free choice, and all that. It's all part of the purpose of all of creation. All of creation is centered around man. Man is the focal point of creation, and everything that exists revolves around man and the decisions that man makes. So even the malachim are tied to man's decisions. And he said this is the idea behind the dream that Yaakov had, that he saw a ladder that was rooted in the ground and the top went up into the heavens, and there were malachim going up and down the ladder. So he explained that the idea that's being hinted at there is that the ladder represents the neshama, which again is rooted in the ground and goes up to the heavens, and everything that happens in between is all on this ladder. So the malachim, with all their jobs and all of their greatness and all of their holiness and all of that, are only moving because the ladder. So it's man's actions, words, and thoughts that give movement to the malachim, and in effect to all of the various realms and worlds. And he started this, just to recap, with the idea that man is the life of all of the worlds. And that idea is the same. It's that all the growth, all the existence, all the sustenance that all of the worlds have is all through the actions of men. Okay, we got that? This is a recap. We good? Yes.
So, did you also then explain, like, why there's malachim? Is that a given?
Why there's malachim is something we learned at length in Derech Hashem. The malachim are there to be they accomplish a number of things. In this context, what they accomplish is that they are the filters between worlds, and they are the sustainers of that which the kaiches accomplish. They are the ones that keep it going here in this world, and they also are there at the transition points between one level and the next.
When other people who are involved in, like, weird, I don't know, supernatural or mystical things, not for good reasons, are they trying to interact with angels, malachim, or is that different entities?
Are people who are doing bad things trying to interact with malachim? I don't think I can answer that. Is magic involve malachim? No. No. Okay. So let's start here with chapter 11. Okay, and this is the reason Shahamalachim Hamakdishim Bishmei Marim, that the Malachim that say Kedusha in the celestial heights, Mamtinim Milashalish Kedushasam, they wait to make this three-pronged Kedusha, Al Achar Sha'anu Mishalshim Kedusha Milamata, until we, down here, do our three-pronged Kedusha. So what does this mean? So the Gemara tells us that the Malachim say Kedusha. We say it in davening, right? We say in before Shema, during Shacharis, we talk about how the Malachim are doing all these things, and they get together and they turn one to the other and they say, Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzivaka, it's Melech al Eretz Kavod. Okay, this line that Hashem is holy 3 times, and the whole world is filled with his honor. And then they continue and they say, Baruch Kavod Hashem, okay, Hashem is the source of everything from his place. And then they end off with Hashem Yimlech Le'Avad, that Hashem reigns forever. So this concept of the 3 verses and the 3 times saying Kadosh, this is something that the Malachim do. Now, the Gemara tells us that they only do that after we do it. So once we down here say Kedusha, we say it in Berachos Kriya Shema, then we say it again in the Chazon repetition, Ashmona Esrei. When we say that, then the Malachim are able to say it, but not before that. So this is what he's describing over here. He says, so this is the reason for this. The reason that the Malachim wait for us to say our Kedusha before they can say their Kedusha, even though their holiness is certainly greater than our holiness. The reason for this is not because they are showing honor and respect to the Jews and saying, we're not going to do it until they do out of deference. It's simply because it's not possible for them at all to say this Kedusha, from their own power, to open their mouths and say this Kedusha to Hashem, until we down here say that Kedusha, and that itself gives the Malachim the ability to say it themselves. So yes, their level of Kedusha is greater than ours, but they are completely powerless. They cannot say Kedusha until we create that influence from down here and make it possible for them to do it up there. So it's an interesting thing, because even though they are on a greater level as far as the Kedusha aspect, nevertheless, they have nothing without our doing what we do. We are what gives them the power. Okay? Lots of blank faces. No? Okay, now we'll move on. Kinyan Amiras HaKedusha, because the concept of saying Kedusha, hu ha'alas ha'alamas his kashrusam. It is about raising the levels and connecting them in all the different worlds.
I just have one question.
Okay.
What is the concept of the Sholish Kedushas? I mean, I don't mean that. I do, but I don't. In other words, Mishalshalim, why is it called Mishalshalim Kedusha?
Why is the concept of Kedusha in threes? What's the significance of the threes?
Yeah, what is that?
Okay. So the idea of the threes...
Is that what he says the next thing, but you mean it in smaller...
No, not really. I mean, it's related to that, but it's not really that. The idea of the threes, we say in Uval Etzion. Okay, so in Uval Etzion, we translate the Kedusha, and we kind of express it in full. And the three ideas of Kadosh is Kadosh in this world, Kadosh up in there, and Kadosh forever. So it's those three concepts of being all-encompassing. Time and space, and physical and spiritual, right? So it's all those three concepts. That's what the triple concept of Kedusha is. Okay. So...
You bow. Is that why people bow Kadosh? Zel, zel, zel.
The zel, zeh, but when we say Kadosh, we actually lift ourselves up on our toes, which is what he's going to describe.
Bowing people do by Kedusha. Yeah, they do. You bow to the left, to the right.
People say, when they say zel, zeh, because that's the idea which he talks about where the Malachim talk to each other.
Is that the next thing that he said, the right or the left?
We're not going to go through that, but that's where it comes from.
Would you bow to the right first or the left first or whatever?
I've never seen the source for that minhag. I've also never seen anybody prominent do it either. So I don't know much about it. I don't know.
Which minhag?
The minhag that some people have, that when they say Vakara Zeh El Zeh, they turn to the right and to the left. And yes, it is based on the next thing that it says here, which we're not going to go through. But yeah, that is where it's based on. I mean, it's the idea of Vakara and Zeh El Zeh that we say in Birchas Kriyashma. We say that the Malachim turn to each other. So that's kind of the idea. But yes, the idea of right and left is the Hechalas that he mentions. Yes?
The influence initiating from Yisrael is from a minion. Is that what we're talking about?
It is specifically when there is a minion, correct. Yes, in order to create this level of Kedusha, there needs to be a minion. That is right. Okay. So, the idea of Kedusha is the raising of the worlds and their connections. Kol olam ba'olam shemei alav. Each world with the world above it. L'haiser kedushasam tzich ayram, which will increase their holiness and the shine of their light. So the concept of kedusha is, and he's not really describing it. He's more defining it without giving it much of a description. He's just saying that the idea of this Kedusha is that it connects worlds, and it raises worlds. And in order for that process to happen, there has to be a power of Kedusha. And that is what is happening when we say our Kedusha, that enables the Malachim to say their Kedusha, which in turn makes these worlds rise and connect and interlock and influence one another and all that. So it's a very deep concept. I don't really understand what that means, but in this chain of events that everything is connected to Hashem at the source, and then coming down here, the more connected things are, the better they're going to be. Because once something is disconnected to some extent, it's less connected to Hashem in a way. It's really not. It's really not the lack of Hashem, but the influence is less direct. And with less direct influence, it's going to be less potent, less good, less powerful, whatever you want to call it. And that's obviously not a good thing. So by saying Kedusha and recognizing that Hashem is the source of all this and the connection of it all, so we're able to kind of repair those broken links and allow for that connection to be solid. And when the connection is solid, then each world is able to benefit from the world above it and grow from the world above it and in itself grow. So all of the different levels will benefit from a solid connection to the source where everything's coming from. So by saying Kedusha, we and the Malachim together are able to allow this connection to be strengthened. And when that connection is strengthened, each of the worlds along the way will grow by connecting to the one on top of it and being influenced by it. Yes?
So how do women relate to that process?
How do women relate to the process? Women can say Kedusha just like men can say Kedusha.
But it's not in a minyan, which is the
If it's not in a minyan, then we don't say Kedusha. Nobody says, men don't say Kedusha without a minyan
Right,
either.
It's kind of weird, like if I showed up to the minyan, the daily minyan, I'd be the only woman there, that'd be creepy.
Why? We have a women's section.
There's nobody, because it's
Is that a question?
yeah, it's a question.
That's not a question.
That is a question.
The fact that you don't want to do something doesn't make it weird.
Okay, so you're saying that women can be part of the minyan.
Absolutely, women can be part of it. Of course they can.
Well, they also have,
They just don't have
Even
to.
if they don't.
They just don't have
Thank you,
to.
Herbie. You said just they don't count.
No, women of course participate.
Let me understand this. Is there another way to relate to a minion that the energy or the person, the neshama, would contribute to that minion, even if they don't count?
If they were not present,
No, if they were present.
if they're present and they're responding to Kedusha the same way the men are, they have just as much a part of it as the men do. What does that mean?
Even though they don't count for the 10.
The 10 is what's required to create the atmosphere that allows for the Kedusha to work. Once it's there, everybody, kids are the same way. Everybody who's there and present contributes.
Okay.
It's just that you need that base in order for it to start. Without the starting, nothing works.
It's like the structure.
Yeah,
foundation.
yeah. I mean, it's like the key. It's the ignition. Without the key in place, nothing's going to work. You can have all the systems, but none of them are going to work if you don't turn on the ignition. So the 10 is what's necessary to be the base where everything starts. Once it's there, everybody who's involved contributes. Even during the week, in the women's section. Women are not required to, though, and it is therefore uncommon, but certainly not discouraged. Okay.
It is early in the morning.
It is a bit early, yes. All right. Okay. All right, so now the part that we're going to skip, but to humor Rabbi Goldman, because he wanted to know if this is related. The idea, the Zohar talks about how there are malachim on the right and on the left. Now, we already know that being on the right and being on the left in regards to Hashem doesn't mean physically right and left, because Hashem isn't in a particular place that he could have a right or a left. So what it means is ma'aminu masmilim. It means those who are more. I guess we can call them the positives and the negatives. Just to.
It doesn't mean chesed and gevura. It means.
I'm not going to get into what it means.
Okay.
Okay. The idea is that there are two distinct groups that are involved in this kedusha process. And they are called Yamin and Shmol, right and left. Again, it does not mean physically right and left. There's no such thing as a physical right and left in relation to Hashem. So, the Zohar describes how these two groups kind of, one says something to the other, and the other responds with Kadosh, 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 and then the other one responds with Baruch Kavod, and that's how the Kedusha kind of works out. So that is presumably where there are those who have a custom where they get it from, that when they say Kar Zel Zed, that they bow to the right and to the left, referring to these malachim who are called right and left. Now again, it doesn't mean literally right and left, so just be aware. Okay. Let's see, what else? I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff over here. Yes.
But the Kedusha was not done until after the men of the Great Assembly actually created a Shemona Esrei, or did they have a different Kedusha?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that Kedusha is something that's always been going on. Pretty sure, yeah.
Just the next thing you mentioned about raising up, so that's the next paragraph.
Okay.
About Halos Aslan based on using Kedusha.
Okay. So,
It's the concept you just said, that we're raising ourselves up level to level to level.
yeah. Okay, so now, so the Nefesh Hachaim here brings a bunch of sources in the Zayar, Pri Etz Chaim, and other sources who talk about this idea of the Kedusha and how the Malachim are doing this in response to what we do, and the hint at this raising that's being described comes in where we have a minhag that when we say Kadosh, 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 we raise ourselves up onto our toes, and then again when we say Baruch Kavod, and again when we say Yimlech, because each of these it's an elevation that's going on, the elevation of the levels of the worlds from one to the other, which is where he says perhaps the minhag comes from, to raise ourselves up onto our toes when saying these phrases. Okay, so now he continues and says, "There's no way that a malach can do this on its own. A malach is incapable. It's only once we do it. L'zayis, for this reason, the malachim cannot open their mouths to sing this praise to Hashem, this kedusha, until Klal Yisrael down here are gathered together and are saying the kedusha here. That allows the malachim to do their part up there. Okay? Yes? Okay. Now, if Chas v'Shalom there was a time in which all of Klal Yisrael refrained from saying kedusha, Memela behechrech ayugam hema nishtakim elakdish kedushasam. It would perforce mean that the malachim would also not be able to say their kedusha. And he brings a pasuk from the Zayar where the pasuk in Yechezkel says, "Ba'amdam terapena kanfehim." When they stop, their wings weaken. Meaning to say, or this means, Keshe Yisrael lamata aimdim shaiskim. When Klal Yisrael down here stops, then memela terapena kanfehim shahamanimala. Then automatically the wings of the malachim are going to be weakened, because Ki'inyan Amiras Kedusha Hu Gam Kanfehim, the concept of the Malachim saying Kedusha is related to their wings, without getting into what that's all about and whatever. Moving on. So that's the idea here. We're saying that when Klal Yisrael says Kedusha, that enables the Malachim to say it as well, and all the things that are accomplished as a combination of those two forces working together. Yes?
So what happened pre-Matan Torah?
What happened pre-Matan Torah? What do you mean?
When there was not yet a Klal Yisrael, how did this work?
How did this work before Klal Yisrael? Okay, I don't know the answer to that question. It's similar to what Dr. Kroiko was asking earlier. I don't know the answer as to exactly how things worked, but I'm pretty sure that the idea is that there were always individuals who were accomplishing whatever this needed to be, and in each generation there was at least one person who was on this level, who was able to accomplish all these different things, perhaps in a different format, but was able to accomplish this, which allowed for the Malachim to do what they needed to do. Meaning, Noach in his time was, through whatever he was doing, presumably was accomplishing the same thing that we accomplish when we say Kedusha, and that allowed for the Malachim to do what they needed to do. That's my assumption. but there was never a time in the world in which there was nobody righteous who was accomplishing these things. That's my guess. But again, 1 second. But perhaps, based on this Gemara, perhaps if there was a time that it was absent from the world, then the Malachim didn't sing Shira. The Malachim didn't say Kedusha. That's what this Gemara is implying. Now, it doesn't say that there ever was such a time, or there wasn't. It doesn't describe that. But if there was such a time that nobody was doing it, then yeah, they wouldn't have been able to do it either. Yes?
I'm just trying to understand, like, the times of destruction and how this concept relates to that. Does there only need to be one minyan in the world to say Kedusha? Or is there a multitude of connections that need to be made? I'm just trying to think, like, during the Holocaust, when so many minions were destroyed, does that bring destruction on destruction? But there were also minyanim in the United States and Eretz Yisrael and other places outside of the area of destruction. I'm just trying to understand if there's an issue of population, if there.
Okay. I don't know. The wording that he says is that if there's no Kedusha anywhere in the whole world, then the Malachim will lose their ability. Which sounds like it's anywhere would accomplish. But at the same time, I would assume that there is still a weakening of the effect if it's happening in less places or less often. So if there's an area of the world that there's no Kedusha going on, then I would assume there is an effect from that there is some sort of lacking that goes on because a whole segment is missing. And perhaps every single minyan, if there's a minyan that doesn't gather and they don't say Kedusha that day, that might have a negative effect. I don't know. But it's certainly possible.
It wasn't pretty descriptive. You say
Rabbi?
Right. In other words, the concept would certainly cease entirely if Kedusha ceased entirely.
There's a Gemara Brachos that discusses Shkosh Baruch Hu, when a minion at Kavua doesn't come.
Right. So I just what I was suggesting is that perhaps this is part of that. Is that when Hashem is waiting for a minyan and they don't show up, then there is a negative effect. And I'm just thinking that this is probably part of that negative effect, is that lack of Kedusha minimizes the ability of the Malachim to some extent to offer their own Kedusha. Yes, Gula.
It's also, it would make sense because Yechezkel, he had less of a vision of the Masa Merkava, and the Mefarshim say because there, the Beis HaMikdash was already waning, there was less tefillah. So it's mashma like, yeah, when it's the Malachim's power was diminished because they didn't say Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzavakol, they were saying, well, Kavod Hashem didn't come more. That there was some sort of a reduction at that point when there were less Jews, particularly in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah. There certainly is a diminishing of Kedusha in the world when Klal Yisrael is doing less Kedusha-oriented things. How that relates to the Malachim's ability to say their own Kedusha, I don't know the extent of it, but I am perhaps every missed Kedusha is a weakening and every said Kedusha is a strengthening. It might be.
So is that weakening?
I understand it's more powerful in Eretz Yisrael also.
I don't know. It certainly makes sense that it would be. Yes.
So is that weakening a lack of protection for Yisrael?
Is it a lack of protection for Klal Yisrael? I mean, I'd have to assume so. I don't know that for sure, but I'd have to assume so. I mean, everything's connected, so. Okay. What else? We're good? Okay. Moving on. Okay. All right, he then goes into the different malachim, different types of malachim, and what each of them says, and how the kedusha process happens. I'm not going to get into that.
But it is good to point, I think it's good to point out the lashon of the kedusha of whether you're Nusach Sfarad or Ashkenaz. Shashal kedusha kasav adamiyach v'kar zal zev yom kadosh kadosh kadosh, like you said, loch la'aretz kavodo, and then lumasam b'sham from the omrim. Right, the other ones opposite what they just said. They say Baruch Kavod Hashem B'Kamo. Like that's what's happening here, and that's why we say in Kedusha, first there's Kadosh, then we say the Chazan says B'Uma Sam Baruch Meir or Mishav, whatever, either way, and then Baruch Kavod Hashem B'Kamo. So like it explains what Tzibur is saying, and then what the Chazan adds, and then what the Tzibur says again is what these Malachim are going to do as well.
When we say Kedusha, we are describing what they're saying.
Right.
We're describing what's going on, the same way we do in Berachos Kriyashma, that we say that the Malachim are gathering and they're doing this, they're doing that, and one says to the other, which is referring to these two groups, where it's singing the praises and all that. So that process is what we're describing when we say Kedusha.
Right. So I think that's an important point to realize that this is not just random words.
Yeah. Yes. That is true. Don't ever think davening is random. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, he just goes on to say, he describes how each group of malachim is sourced in a different place, and therefore they are empowered to say a different element or aspect of this kedusha. So you have the Kadosh group, and you have the Baruch Kavod group. And Klal Yisrael, he says, we have it all. Like with everything else, we are empowered with all of this, and therefore we say both Kadosh and Baruch, which are what the two different groups say up there. Okay, now, he goes on.
Do people say Parak Shira?
He goes on to talk about Parak Shira. So Zeu Gam Kain Inyan Amiras Parak Shira. This is also the idea of saying Parak Shira. Now, Parak Shira is something you may or may not be familiar with. They sell them. It was popular for a few minutes, and everybody made their own version of it with all sorts of pictures and things. But Parak Shira is, I don't believe we know the author. I think it's of unknown authorship. And it is very, very early. It's not like a recent thing at all. It's certainly very old. And it basically describes the different elements of creation, of existence, and the praises that they sing. Now, this doesn't literally mean that they're singing. What it means is that every aspect of creation kind of it's an obvious praise to Hashem just by its very existence. So sometimes we see something and we're inspired by it, we're awed by something. That is, it's praise to Hashem, essentially, because we're saying, wow, look at what Hashem made. So Parak Shira basically goes through all the different aspects of creation. It talks about the basic elements of wind, fire, water, and earth, and it talks about the seas, and it talks about lots of animals and fish, and then it talks about the angels, and it talks about the shade, and all sorts of things. And it basically goes through all the different aspects of creation. I forget how many there are. It's like 58 or something. I don't remember the number. And they are all associated with a particular pasuk. And that pasuk is the praise, so to speak, that they sing. Again, it's not physical singing, but it's that their existence shows the truth of this particular verse. So this concept, he says, there are those who would say it daily, as the Gemara says, Kol ha'omer parak shir b'chol yom. Anyone who says Parak Shira every day is guaranteed a place in the world to come. What's the idea? So he says, because by saying this, it includes all of the various kachas, the powers that exist in the world that are all delineated there. It gives power to all of the malachim and all of the officiating malachim shall call elu habriyas of all of these different creations. Sheyamru elu hashiras that allows them to say or sing their praise. And this allows for their life and their hashpa, their influence, to come back down here and influence everything here on this world. So the idea is that all of these different things, whether it's talking about the eagle or it's talking about the stalk of wheat, or it's talking about the power of wind, whatever they are. Each of these things has a root in one of the main branches of creation, and each of them is connected to a particular pasuk. As we said, everything is sourced in the Torah, so everything is connected to a particular pasuk. And when we say Parak Shira, then we are giving that ability for those things to then sing their own Shira, to sing their own praises. Just like when we say Kedusha, we allow the Malachim to say Kedusha, even though what we're saying is, this is what the Malachim say, and we go on and say it, so then the Malachim are actually able to do that. So the same thing. When we say, this is what the blade of grass says, so that allows the Malach that's connected with that blade of grass to, in fact, say that Shira. And that is how these things have power. And once they do that, that influence then comes back down to us, because it goes both directions. So by saying Parak Shira daily, the Gemara tells us a person is guaranteed a portion of the world to come, because what they're accomplishing is huge. They're accomplishing tremendous amounts by giving all of these different aspects of creation their power and their ability to sing their praises, and thereby bring all of that influence back down to us.
Is that a male person or a female person or both?
Who?
The person who can do this.
Who can say Parak Shira? Anybody.
And a woman can do it just as... with the
Anybody can do it.
Says
I would say it's
Kol
probably more.
Says what?
Kol ha'omer. Anyone who's
I would say it's probably more popular amongst women than men.
No, when I was living in Eretz Yisrael, we did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Art
a thing.
Scroll has a lovely one
Art
full
Scroll
of
has
pictures.
Lots of
Beautiful
pictures.
one.
Yeah. I'm telling you, Google it. You'll find hundreds. There was like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, like
it was a
all of a
thing.
sudden became popular. It was a big fad. Everybody published their own version. Lots of nice pictures and everything.
Yeah.
And then it kind of faded. But yeah, certainly a nice thing to do for sure. It is long. Yeah, it is. All right, that will do it for today. Okay, very good. Thank you all for coming. I will not be here next week. Unfortunately, fortunately, Nefesh Hachaim will be traveling for a family simcha. My nephew's getting married. Unfortunately, the airline decided to change our flights, so I will not be here in the morning. I'll have to leave here at like 6:30 or something. So I will not be here for class next week, but Nefesh Hachaim the next week we'll be back on. Alrighty, have a good one.
You meet early before shopping.
You know.